Hey friends, welcome back to the Roundtable. Thanks so much for joining us. We are actually finishing up the season of our Sacred Cow series. And so today we talk about the Sacred Cow of agreement, that we always have to, we feel like we always have to agree on everything. And so we're going to kind of navigate this conversation, remind you of some things we've learned about this season. But we want to make an ask of you. If you listen to this and you kind of just stream it, we would actually ask you to subscribe. And so you can subscribe on iTunes and Stitcher. We would really appreciate that. And like us on whatever social media platform you have, we are on all of them. And so you can go to Instagram or Twitter or Facebook and follow us. We give updates on what we're not only doing with the podcast, but what we're doing with the Equip Ministry at Austin Ridge. We have classes that you can join and other events that we do as well. And it's a great way to follow us. So thanks so much for joining us this season, and we hope you enjoy the season finale.
So you got some coffee before we came.
Oh, man. Yep.
You're back on the coffee.
I am, yeah. So I guess I could say this now. I didn't want to really confess this while we were shooting from home. It felt kind of weird. But I did have the COVID. Is there like this public shame if you get COVID?
I think so.
Is there?
I don't know.
I mean,
I had the COVID.
Oh, now we're all confessing. Nice. Awesome.
Jeff has not.
I'm Rona-free. Rona-free.
Which is just shocking.
That
It
you
really
know of.
That's true, too.
Oh, you might have had it
true.
the year
Man, I
plus
went
ago.
to Vietnam.
You got sick.
Like when it was rolling out.
Right.
I was
When
in
it was
Vietnam,
rolling out.
you know?
Like it was some movie or something.
Your mom didn't even know the things she should have been afraid of when you were on that trip.
No clue. Or me either, for that matter.
That's true,
most
any of
likely.
us.
Yeah, so when I got the Rona a month ago, you lost taste and smell, and I am really passionate about food, and I really wanted to taste. So I looked up all the hacks online on how to rehabilitate those damaged nerves in your nose that COVID damages. And so it's the sniffing effect. So coffee, garlic, lemon pepper, cinnamon, those kind of things. And every day, 4 times a day, I was just, sniffing. That's gonna translate through the microphone. I can tell because I have the headphones on today. And coffee, I had been drinking at least a cup or two or more a day, and then after that, for the last month, couldn't do it. Man. It was like gross, skunky, chemically. I mean, just yeah. And so today, I brewed my first at home, and I realized I'd never washed out the pot from a month ago.
Ew.
Yeah, you tasted that.
Yeah, that's right.
Had floaters.
It added some good texture.
Now, Lorri, have you gotten your taste buds
Nope.
back? Still not.
Still since December.
Oh my gosh.
Got to rehab that. You got to go start.
I don't know
sniffing.
Was there a particular thing that
He
worked
did the
for you?
orange thing.
I did. I fried an orange over the open flame, charred the outside, got it hot, took it out of the peel, put some brown sugar in it, and that supposedly, it's bitter, it's
Sounds
sweet.
lovely.
It's it actually was not so bad. And that helped the most for Stephanie, because Stephanie is still struggling, but that definitely kickstarted it.
So your wife had it too. You just added her on.
Oh, whoops. Yeah. All right. Well, we got to move on from that one. Hey, so today, it's interesting. Every time we do these series, really and truly, even when we're out of a season, it's kind of cool over the last, 15 to 18 months we've been kind of together doing this. We all feel when we need to do an episode. It's kind of like through our text thread, okay, this is an issue we need to kind of address or go through. And then when we're going through a season, we map it out, but we all kind of start feeling, okay, we got to land the plane.
Right.
So this is it. This is the season finale.
Plane is being landed as
That's
we
right.
speak.
Have you ever noticed how Jeff always wants to land the plane sooner than the two of us?
Oh, sure.
Jeff is always like, I'm done
done.
I've
talking.
said everything I have to say about this on episode 1. I'm just riffing from that point on. Totally riffing. Actually,
Nice.
I'm even kind of riffing on episode 1. If I'm being real honest.
Yeah. That's true. So this is it, and it's really, really cool. So we were thinking about what we would do and how we would land the plane, and this one was not necessarily on our radar when we mapped out the season, but it became very clear as we talked around all these kinds of issues.
Was it Caitlin that kind of gave us this?
Yeah, and so we were kind of getting some feelers from different people. Hey, what do you think we should, make sure we say or talk about before we end the season? And so Caitlin, who is on our staff, our Equip team, she's like, man, one thing that just keeps going through my mind as you guys are talking is how do we navigate agreement or being of one mind or unity in the church when we have sacred cows and we have these opinions and really believe different things about orthodoxy.
Right.
So I thought it was really, really cool. So today's title is the sacred cow of agreement, that we all must agree on all things.
Yes.
And so
And we elevate that to
the thing.
utmost proportions.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and so I think before we kind of dive right on in, I think what will help this conversation, it is a culmination of everything we've talked about. And so let's just do a little review. By the way, if you're just now joining us for the season finale, I would encourage you to go back, listen through the season. You can find those on iTunes and on Spotify. What's
Stitcher.
the other?
Stitcher.
Thank you. Yeah, I need to start with an S. So iTunes or Stitcher, that'd be great. Go check those out. So the idea of sacred cows. Can you guys help me out? Because I've been talking a lot. What?
That was mine and Jeff's plan. We're just going to let
I
you
know.
go this week.
Yeah, clearly.
Are you going to ask us to define sacred cows?
Yes,
because,
please.
For the listener, let the listener understand that we did that on episode 1, and then we were still so confused by what we said about it on episode 1. That's what episode 2 was
The
about.
whole episode.
Pretty much as well. So
yeah.
a sacred cow is basically something that I'm going to do my dead level best to get this right.
Yeah.
It's basically something, a belief or a view that we hold so tightly to that is beyond questioning.
Right.
Like, don't question me about this. I'm settled. I've made up my mind. This one, I'll go this far and no further.
Yeah.
With this
Right.
kind of thing.
And one of the facets or the tagline that we've had was sometimes it's not an issue of right or wrong, even though we make it that. It's an issue of wisdom and how we exercise our belief in our faith. And then we kind of realized as we not redefined it, but defined it again that second episode, we talked about orthodoxy
And orthopraxy.
and opinion and what's an opinion.
Yeah, because there's some things that are wise for you to settle on that I don't have to apply wisdom in the same way.
That's right.
Right.
That way you say that?
Yeah, for sure. And then we applied it to the marriage. And do you guys think back to that? Anything that stands out to you about just the way in which couples, I think what we did, the angle we took there was just advice people give that they live out maybe in their own marriage or maybe don't.
Yeah.
Right.
And they just presuppose it on other people.
That if you don't do it this way, you're wrong.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or your marriage is not as full as mine or not as productive.
Or it's destined to fail.
So, exactly.
Yeah. And then we re-aired an episode that we did back in January, but it was on politics. And even though it wasn't at the time under the umbrella of sacred cows, we thought it was really relevant.
Right.
And so I think in there was all about first primary issues versus secondary issues, tier 1, tier 2, which is something that we'll talk about even more today. Parenting was so fun. We did it in 2 episodes.
We did.
So that was good. You can take a look at that. We talked about faith, discipline, school, and media. And then last week, which actually is airing again, we did it 2 weeks in a row, the same episode, because we just felt like there was a lot there, which is license and legalism. And we just talked about different buckets under that. So today, as we think about all those things, and if you're sitting there thinking, I don't know if I agree with these guys around the round table, well, then hopefully today will be helpful to you. So here are a series of questions, and then we're just going to talk about it. All right. So under the umbrella of sacred cow of agreement, when and how do we confront someone with wrong orthodoxy? Or how do we truly evaluate if it's just me upset and it's my opinion, my sacred cow? How do we assess if their belief is sinful or an opinion? And what if their belief is not affecting people but just affecting only themselves, So there's just a lot of different, I can understand some of these questions and wanting unity and wanting everyone to be on the same page, but it's not necessarily going to be. So the first thing I think we could bring back up, or things that we should talk about again as we think about the sacred cow of agreement, is like that theological triage. Where did that come from? And do you guys remember? Was that an article?
Albert Mohler.
Yeah. He borrowed it from somebody, but I heard it first from him, so we'll say
I heard it first from him, and then I know that Gavin Ortland has just written a book that talks about
Okay.
theological triage.
Which book is that?
It's the book is something about which hills are worth dying on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Theological triage in the church.
Yeah.
So
I just think, is there anyone that you agree with about everything?
No. Wait, let me.
Is
no.
there any?
no, that didn't take long. No.
Yeah, and I think that becomes the sacred cow. But it's not a thing. We don't.
There's no such thing as full agreement.
Right. So there's these different camps, and there's tribalism, and and some you belong to a camp. Like some people, like just like Paul says in 1 Corinthians 1, some follow Apollos, some follow Cephas, some follow Paul. But like, which issue has out of all the issues has your camp landed 100% on everything? Probably not. Right. And so we have to assess, in that, first tier, second tier, and then exercise wisdom. And any comments on just the hierarchical of agreement when it comes to theological triage?
Gosh, I just think we have to remember that humans are so complex. I mean, we operate with an intellect, we operate with emotions, we operate with. There's a lot of complexity, and so if you are stronger, for example, Jeff, in the intellectual part of your thinking, and if Joey is stronger in the emotional part of his reaction to things.
You're very emotional.
Hypothetically speaking, started that statement with if.
He's in touch with his feelings now. We've learned about that.
That's right. We've learned about that. Then
hanging around you guys, though. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, that's made you less feely?
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, we
repress. Yeah.
Jeff and I call that have thicker skin, but if you want to call it repression, whatever. Anyway, so if we lean more towards one or the other in assessing any issue, we may express that differently. Like we may think we disagree, but it's just that I'm leading with my intellect and you're leading with your feelings. And so I just think there's so much involved when it comes to agreement about truly listening and truly understanding the experiences that the other person is coming from. Sometimes the words sound like we're disagreeing, but the heart of the matter may be the same.
Yeah.
I think we forget just how complex we are in our reactions to things and in our initial sort of, reactions to things.
I really like, different personalities, different giftings, different experiences, being at different points of sanctification. Like I might not experience what you experience, and so your theology and your intellect informs something based on those experiences that I didn't. Like the word understanding, I think knowledge. The word knowledge in the New Testament is experiential understanding. Right. It's not just in the brain,
right?
And so our theology plays out practically.
Yeah. We tend to lead with statements and not with questions sometimes. So like maybe a way I could even enter into what you were saying is to start with the question like, why is this so important to you? Why is that particular belief so important? You'll sit. In our theology class, we had the office hours thing just last night, and there's some things that come up, and you can tell that there's more behind this than just wanting to know a yes/no answer. Right. Like there's this whole, lifelong thing that they've been dealing with, and now they're asking this question to try to make sense of that. So why is that question important to you, or why is that position so important to you, and seek to understand where somebody's coming from. Philip Williams, our care pastor, talks about the belong, believe, behave. A lot of times we want to jump to the end of how something's playing out in somebody's life versus taking one step back and going, okay, what's the belief that's driving that? But even taking another step back from that at the beginning and going, does this person feel safe? Do they feel like they belong in this conversation, part of this community, to even start there?
I love that because it's like the posture of you care for the person and the fellow Christ follower, brother or sister in Christ, more than being right.
Yeah, the brain is actually attached to a person.
Yeah,
right.
Right.
Yeah.
Who has a soul.
I forget that so quickly. It's like, because, you kind of want to lead with truth,
Yeah.
At all costs, truth at all costs.
Yeah, it's like the truth reflex or the grace reflex, and we love to come out swinging with the truth reflex, because like, wait a second, and we become so dogmatic and a protector. And I believe that protecting comes from a good place. It really does. Like all of it comes from a good place.
It does.
I think for the most part, from a good place of like, like Jude, contend for the faith, and being cautious of listening to the ways of this world,
Well, I think even Jude's a great example, even more so. Like, I wanted to write this letter to you to deal with this thing, but I see this other thing playing out, so instead I decided to write this letter. Are we willing to even bend our desires for a particular thing we want to communicate to a particular person, situation, need, that sort of thing? Because I think when we're able to do that, we can still kind of have our sacred cows, but we don't serve them anymore. And they're kind of in service to us.
Oh, I love that. it's not necessarily because of our experiences. It's not necessarily that our sacred cows are going to poof disappear. It's that we don't have to serve them.
Right.
Yeah.
We can recognize it as a sacred cow. And I really like that. That's a good way to think about that. I was also thinking, I used to say this a lot when my kid was little. It's unless we are talking about tier 1 issues, to go back to the tiers, unless we are talking about salvific issues of Christ alone, faith alone, grace alone, unless we're talking about that, it is probably better to be loving than right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are literally times when I have shut down arguments, specifically with my kid. I wouldn't say this to my husband because it probably feels a little patronizing to say it to a grown up. But I would say to her, listen, we're not going to argue about this anymore because I love you and I would rather be loving towards you than to try to convince you I'm right. And it's okay.
Yeah.
I don't need you to think I'm right. It's better to be loving than right.
I don't care that you're 6, and I don't care that you don't know what salvific means.
Probably. That is probably how that went down.
I think Selah probably did when she was like 3, but
Probably taught you.
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Right.
Well, the theological triage, and I think all these kind of buckets run together. But what we're talking about is a Christ follower's posture. What our posture should be. That 1 Peter 3:8 passage. I love the way he packaged this. Finally, all of you. He says, have unity of mind, but then look at the following words: have the unity of mind, sympathy, brotherly love, a tender heart, and a humble mind. Like he speaks to both the mind and the heart,
right?
And I just love, I wish I would have done word studies on these, but unity of mind, sympathy, brotherly love, that you care for that person, and then Galatians 5:6, that faith, works itself out in love, in a posture of love. So, what if we don't know it all? Like, what if?
What if? Again, hypothetically, what if I don't know it all?
Yeah. Man, our first step should be one of humility, right? So, anyway.
Well, that word mind, I don't know if it's in the NIV or the NASB. The first time it's used can also mean spirit. So just the idea that kind of in our, it does get to how we think and how we process everything, but it's also feeling. Like it's also just kind of this at the seat of our emotions, kind of in the heart, that we are unified. It's not just about what we think; it's how we feel about each other. It's how we interact. And
I wanted to go there because Paul talks about it so much, and clearly, so does Peter. But what does it mean to be of one mind? So when you say not only just in what theologically, but just the feeling towards them. So when there's this kind of command or imperative for the church to be of one mind, what are we talking about? What is the essence of that?
For me, I think it has more to do with one goal. And when I think of the one mind verse, I think of Philippians 1:27, where Paul is writing to the Philippians and he says, conduct yourself in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ, so that whether I come and see you or remain absent, I may hear of you that you are standing firm in one spirit, with one mind, striving together for the faith of the gospel. So the oneness comes in that we are all fighting for the faith of the gospel.
Yeah.
It's not, I don't hear Paul saying there that you have to be uniform.
Yeah, that's good.
In the way you do that. I don't hear Paul saying one mind, one spirit, unity. I'm putting air quotes around unity. Unity. That's right. Sorry, can't hear that. He's not saying that unity must be uniform. And I think that I do this, that I think if I'm not uniform in how I think and I feel about something, that means there's not unity. And I'm not sure that that's what that means.
Well, and I love that you went to Philippians. So if you jump down to chapter 2, if there's any encouragement in Christ, any comfort from love, any participation in the Spirit, any affection and sympathy, complete my joy by being of the same mind, having the same love, being in full accord and of one mind. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility
of
count
mind.
others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look out not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others. Have this mind among yourselves, which is yours, present tense, in Christ Jesus. So to not be of one mind is to tear down the very thing that is ours, that we currently possess, and to act like we don't possess it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little ooey gooey because it still doesn't necessarily put the finger on it necessarily.
Sure.
But I don't know that you can.
I don't know. Well, when you read that and when you were explaining it, I thought there's no excuse to be a jerk.
Yeah. Right.
Like, don't, whatever it is, whatever the disagreement is, the sacred cow of agreement, when we go after that and we employ it or deploy it, whatever, we feel like we can be the righteous judgmental jerk and say, I'm fighting for truth.
Right.
And that's just the way it is. And what does Jesus say about our enemies? Love them. So even if you think of someone as an enemy, like doctrinally or in practice, like love them. And what does Matthew 18 even say? Like treat them as outsiders. How do Christ followers treat people as outsiders? You love them to woo them to Christ.
You invite them over for dinner. Yeah,
that's right.
I mean, the Philippians and the First Peter passage both have that humble mind.
So much humility.
Posture of humility. Yeah, I'm just thinking about that because you sent that clip of R.C. Sproul to us the other day. If you hadn't seen it before, just Google R.C. Sproul. What's wrong with you people? But there's something about him. Like, you talk about a guy that was a protector of truth, but there's something about him in that clip. It's about 2 minutes long. Watch it. Is like he's literally like chastising this, room full of, a couple thousand people for asking kind of inane questions that they apparently have already answered. But there was still such a love that he had that you could just sense. Like, this guy is laying down hard truth in a very direct way.
Yeah.
And somehow he's doing it in a way that says, I love each one of you. You're better than this.
Yeah.
You can do better than this.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. You can't put your finger on it, but it was there.
Yep.
Like, it's palpable in a,
And that's why I sent it to you guys, because he chastised me in a way that made me want to fall to my knees and say, oh, I've asked this stupid question.
Yeah.
I have asked this stupid question. And he spoke plainly and strongly, but the posture of his heart was so humble.
Yeah.
I think that's what separates us from the world.
Yeah.
Or should separate us from the world.
It should
which
mark
is
us, right?
when in this climate in particular, I'm sure it's always been this way, but in this climate today where there is the sides, that the line has been drawn in the sand about every issue, and there's so much nuance to all these issues, but man, you have, like, in this culture, we're supposed to pick a side, and we have to be on that side, and the extremes are getting worse and worse. But in the church, we should be example of leading the world in showing the world how to disagree in a loving, gracious way.
And that gets back to the Faith and Politics episode, whatever
sure.
it was called, is, so much in our culture in the last, 30 years, starting with the religious right, the fundamentalists, this, that, and the other, everything became this side or that side.
Yeah.
Right.
This or that, you or me, us and them,
Right.
that sort of thing. At the end of the day, what we're saying is to be in unity means that you agree with me.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Right? But, I mean, that's not necessarily a new problem, but I think the
contextualization of
clarity with which we can see the problem is maybe new for a lot of us.
Yeah.
Well, so what do we do? I mean, there are times when, Joey, if you and I can't agree on something and it is grieving my heart,
Right, good.
then there are times that I need to be able to talk to you.
Yeah.
What do we do? Like, let's talk about that. How do we
You
approach
send an
that?
email.
Clearly, that's the right way to do it.
Everything with a couple of links.
Well, so I know you were joking, but let's go. I want to go there for a second under the umbrella of your question, which is,
Oh, I was serious. What were
I
you-
know, yeah,
No,
you
I'm totally-
can't, we can't jump, and I think this happens a lot, and it particularly, there is an issue in mind that I won't go to it. But over the last 15 years of full-time ministry for me, I've gotten so many emails where it has said, I believe in this, you must repent. This is true. And they jump to it becoming an absolute tier 1 orthodoxy issue.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, let's have a conversation. And a lot of times people don't want to have a conversation. You know, they just believe what they believe and they're not willing to bend on it. And it is a slow play. You know, one of the phrases we use around here for a lot of things is the whole crock pot over microwave. And it's so important to remember that we are to let things simmer a little bit, relax, you know, talk about it, talk things out, and not be so reactionary with it. And so I think to your question, Lorri, like if we have that issue, you can't. It goes back to what we say a lot around the round table is like resting a little bit in the tension. That it's not going to be resolved day one. It's going to be probably an issue where we just talk about and we converse about, and I can still love you as a sister in Christ, and you can still love me a brother in Christ. It's the we are all children of God, and we all have this brotherhood, sisterhood thing that's more important than having a solution or an answer for all things.
Going back to 1 Corinthians 3, where you started earlier, Joey, do you not know that you are God's temple and that God's Spirit dwells in you? If anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy him. And it goes down to verse 18. Let no one deceive himself. If anyone among you thinks that he is wise in this age, let him become a fool, that he may become wise. For the wisdom of this world is folly with God. And just even that, it's like to say, you know, I'm willing to become foolish for the sake of the gospel. It takes humility.
Right.
It gets back to that quality. You know, Christ, you know, getting back to Philippians 2 again, is, you know, the fact that he was willing to lay aside the glory that he had in order to demonstrate for us the type of life God desires for us and from us. I mean, just even that, you know, it's like it starts with Jesus, you know, being Christ-led, being Christ-focused, and I mean, he set the model for us. But, you know, you get back to the issue in Corinth, and there's all these divisions there, you know, whether it's spiritual gifts, whether it's their place in the body, where it's how they're worshiping, or whether it's like you mentioned earlier, you know, I follow Paul, I follow Cephas, I follow...
Apollos, Cephas, Paul.
There you go. But in our culture, it'd be like, well, I follow Republican or Democrat. I follow MacArthur or Piper, or I follow, you know, this, that, or the other. And there's just all these things. We just keep picking things. You know, it just gets back that, you know, we kind of say that, you know, our enemy has only a couple of tricks, but they keep working over and over and over again. So the same temptation that the church in Corinth, 80, you know, whatever, 50, 60, is the same issues we have now.
Right.
And we ain't gotten any better at navigating them. That's the thing.
When I think, too, we have to pursue both truth and unity, right? Like we have to pursue both because there's sort of the gospel doctrine, but there's also gospel culture.
What do you mean?
Well, so if we're talking about the truth piece of it, we're kind of talking about doctrine. We're talking about sound teaching. We're talking about how the gospel informs everything, but what the gospel has to do with what Paul is saying here. Because when you were reading those verses in Philippians and talking about, you know, have the same mind, what he's saying is have the same mind as Jesus had. You know what I mean? Like if you read back above this, it's talking about do what Christ did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yes, this is sound teaching and this is sound doctrine, but then we have to live it out.
Yeah.
We have to live in a posture that also is reflective of the gospel.
So what was because gospel posture would be the second thing. I think that I would
gospel truth,
gospel truth, and gospel posture. Right. Like let's be sure that the gospel
orthodoxy, orthopraxy,
exactly. But let's be sure that the gospel is fueling both.
That's good.
The gospel needs to fuel the reason that I'm loving, not just because I don't want to get in a conflict. I actually think it's fine for believers to have disagreements.
Yeah.
It means you're thinking.
Yeah, right.
It means you're not willing to just swallow everything that's thrown at you. But it's how we disagree that is going to show the world, hey, these guys are different. It's not that we have to agree. It's that we have to disagree with integrity.
Yeah.
And we have to disagree with humility, which is the gospel part of it, right? The gospel means I'm a jerk and God saves me in spite of all of that and through nothing that I brought to the table of any value. So when I disagree, I need to have that same posture.
And you know what's interesting? It reminded me that one of the biggest comments we get about our podcast is that they love it when we disagree. Why is that? Why is three Christ followers sitting around a table in front of microphones a breath of fresh air or a cold drink of water, when they're parched? It's like because it's refreshing, because we can do this in a way where it's like, well, wait a second. And we typically resolve it in a way when we talk it out.
Right.
So I remember a couple episodes ago when we were joking around about me wanting to clarify, or not even clarify, I was wanting to correct you all on something.
That's right. He did want to correct us. It was on the punishment that you and I were like, children should feel shame.
Yes.
And Joey was like, do we want to?
Sorry, I just dropped the microphone. Literally dropped the mic.
Wow. Anyway, Joey was like, do we want to clarify that we didn't mean that? And Jeff and I were like, oh, we meant it.
Yeah. But once I can clarify. Exactly what I meant to say. Clear enough for you? Yeah.
But when we talk it out, we're like, oh, we actually weren't that far apart. And I think that's a big point.
Right.
Is sometimes we are, sorry, I got really demonstrative. But that wasn't in my notes. And
I've got one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's a big point, is that we are probably not that far away from each other. We just need to talk it out and stop assuming so much.
Yep.
And then also the other person is not the Antichrist. The other person is not Satan himself. Right. And we have to remember, slow your roll and look it through the lens of the gospel truth, gospel posture, and realize, oh, wow. You said something about the gospel being the fuel. Like I wrote down, like, love is the vehicle of truth. Like, you don't deliver truth, like the R.C. Sproul thing that you guys were talking about. Like it was based in love, but it was still truth. Yeah. And so.
Well, and I had a conflict with, I don't know if you want to call it conflict. I had to have a conversation about disagreement with a really good friend, and thankfully we are really good friends, and so it all went fine. But the point of that is that she came to me and said, hey, I know how much you love Jesus and I know how much you want to represent him well, and I'm concerned about this issue. Can we talk it out? That's the way you do that.
That's the way you enter into that, right.
And once we were done with it, we had a text after that where I just said, thank you so much for handling this way. And she ended the text by saying, it's just a reminder of what Brad says often, which is assume the best when you disagree with someone, and then go to the person.
Right.
Assume the best, go to the person. Assume the best, go to the person. If you assume the best first, that go to the person's probably going to go well.
Right. Yeah. Well, and we've got to prioritize the relationship aspect. That's what makes it so hard in our social media email world. Right. Is even if a relationship is there, you can almost bypass a relationship for the sake of expediency or anonymity almost. You know what I mean? It's like, I can even know you, but if I don't have to look you in the eye and just send you an email, I'm going to be a lot bolder maybe. It's still true, but the way with which it's delivered is going to be much different than if I was in person with you. And I can actually maybe get a sense of what you're feeling.
Yep. I think we can practice the 1 Peter 3:8 better in person. So sympathy, brotherly love, tender heart, humble mind, because I'm looking you in the eyes. We're in the flesh. We're hanging out. And I think we are being trained in this culture by media and social media as that everyone thinks so dramatically about everything. I think a lot of us, might be tempted by that, but are actually a little bit more, normal is the wrong word, but medium about things. And I think we think if someone is slightly off from us, that it's a dramatic shift or pull away from where we are. And I just think we need to be careful not to just assume that someone is so far away or off the reservation than they really are.
I think if the exclamation mark was removed from most people's keyboards, the world would be a much better place. There's a couple folks on Twitter, and I love following both of them because they say a lot of things, and some of the things they say are good, but like everything ends with an exclamation mark. And so anytime I read it, like I'm so distracted, like it just sounds like they're yelling.
Yeah, because it's so emphatic.
It reads like they're yelling. Yeah. But then you see something else they post to somebody else, it's like, don't think this person knows how they're coming across.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing. I don't know what to do with that.
No, that's good. This has been, hopefully it's been really helpful. It's been really helpful for me just to kind of process some of this out loud. I want to give us a chance real quick, just last exhortations, to put an exclamation point on.
Fine.
That's right. On some encouragements or exhortations you have for people in the Sacred Cow series.
The whole series, all of it?
Yeah, or I think you can start with the assessment. I think one of the ones I had was, what does Jesus think about people that you disagree with? And it's just love them.
Yeah.
Woo them towards the gospel truth in the gospel posture way. I just think of we never have an excuse to be a jerk. There's for this bucket of Sacred Cow of agreement. I mean, we could start with that, but anything that comes to mind.
I want to talk about Colossians.
Okay, of course you do.
Yep. I'm pushing for Colossians. It is my favorite book. Maybe I should write a Colossians Bible study.
You should.
You said you were
my
pushing
extra
to
time.
do a series on a round table.
Yeah, on Colossians, but I don't know how that will work. That'd be real weird. Anyway, if it comes to me, I'll let y'all know. But it really is kind of what you were talking about, Joey, is Colossians 3:14 says, put on love, which is the perfect bond of unity. Put on love, which is the perfect bond of unity. And so when I think about that, what that means is I can't insist on my own way. If I'm going to put on love means I look at your needs first.
Yeah.
And it also means I can't dismiss your pain, right? Like I can't, if I really love you, it's that empathy piece that you were talking about from Peter.
Right.
That all kind of comes together. And I don't want anyone to hear me say that I think disagreeing is sinful. I don't.
Yeah, right.
If we think for ourselves, and heaven knows I think for myself, if we think for ourselves, we're likely to hold a different view than is socially convenient.
Right.
At some point in whatever social tribe you're in. If you think for yourself, you are going to have a view that is somewhat different sometimes. So I think we just have to be honest about that and say, I don't see that the way you see it.
Yeah, right.
But I have to be gracious. I have to go out of my way to show kindness and wisdom in that disagreement. Yeah. And I can be tactful about it. I don't have to drop my opinion. I don't have to drop my opinion in the middle of every single conversation that I have.
Yeah.
So there's ways to navigate disagreement that is actually something that woos people towards Christ.
And isn't that just more freeing? Like we add years to our life when we just take a chill pill and relax. Yeah. It is so very important. Jeff, you have anything as we close it out?
Yeah. When I was just texting, I don't know if you can hear that noise on there, but we're downstairs in our church, and all of a sudden they're moving chairs upstairs. I was actually texting, so I probably missed a little bit. But just the old saying, in the essentials we have unity. In non-essentials, we have liberty, and in all things, we give charity. Just the idea that there are things to fight about in the right way.
Yep.
But then there's the other 80% of the stuff. But regardless, how we do it is what's so important. And I mean, I'm what am I, Joey? A 6-wing?
Yeah. So in the Enneagram, which, by the way, is one of those things. Where people make a big deal out of it, and they say it's divisive.
Let's just have a little excursus about that real quick before we sign off.
What's an excursus? I don't know what that means.
Like when a prof will say, it's almost like an aside in their thing, but it's like a little trail they kind of want to go down before they get back to the main content. But
so speaking, I think Enneagram,
it's like a bonus episode within an episode.
By the way, you are a 6-wing 5,
right?
All right, so loyalist with not just intellect, with not some intellect. But that's one of those things where it's like the old school. Well, I shouldn't even say old school. There's some, like we talked about last episode with legalism and license. There's some people believe like dancing or alcohol, is evil, and for some people it actually might be,
right? That's wisdom.
Yeah, but the Enneagram's the same way. It's like the 21st century version of that for the church right now. Is there's this division about the Enneagram because of different people that support it and write about it, and the way they write about it and the way they support it is wrong. But the tool itself can actually be very good.
Right.
So that's one of those things.
Yep.
Any other excursus?
No, I'm
We
distracted
just
by the chairs
excursion?
moving now.
Yeah, that's right. It's
I'm distracted by the chairs moving now.
yeah. Why were you saying you were 6 wing 5, and what was the relevancy, and why we go on that rabbit trail?
Oh, yeah, good point.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it was a fun little.
This
excursus.
is just a wonderful way to end our season,
Well-
where none of us knows what the other one's talking about.
That's okay.
I
It's
think
the
I was
chairs.
going
It was the chairs
somewhere with
upstairs.
how we're wired, maybe.
Yeah, sure.
Those types of things.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's-
Maybe we'll come
Well,
back next season.
we were talking. I'm excited about next season.
What is it
Yeah.
going to be?
Okay, so this is it for a while, and just like always,
Squirrels are running
And
around.
there are
here right now, man.
squirrels.
over the next month or two, we are going to probably come back here, or 3 months from now, we don't know. We'll drop some over the summer as we see fit or relevant, and it might be bonus episodes for Sacred Cows or just a standalone and that kind of thing. We'll be back in the fall though, so it'll be a little bit of a break. And next season, I don't know if we have a title yet. Should we tell them now?
No, I
Or
don't
should we just
think.
tease
I
it
don't
out?
know. What do you think?
Talked about like the adulting angle.
All right, yeah. So let's just go ahead and tease it out. So I think it'd be more fun for people to look forward to it. So we are going to take all of our childhood Sunday school Bible stories,
The flannel graph.
the flannel graph.
There you
right?
go.
And we are just gonna. We mapped it out. I think we had like 40 stories that we
Yes,
could
we are not
possibly-
going to do all of
Yeah.
those.
But it's really fun because there is what we think we believe about them and what the Bible actually says. And then we might even have a little bit of fun and just kind of get inside some of these people's heads.
Yeah.
Like get inside Eve's head, what was going on when she was squaring off with Satan, and get inside David's head. What was he thinking and different events that was going on in his life? And so it'll be a fun kind of deal. And so we hope you are looking forward to that. We would love to hear from you though. If you have questions, and we know you do, we know we say things on here that you're like, wait a second, time out. I need you to explain that more. We would love to hear from you. equip@austinridge.org. And follow us and do all those things. We'd appreciate it. But until next time.
Been a fun season.
Yeah, that's been
It
fun.
has been.
All right, y'all. Thanks. Thanks for joining the discussion today. If you have any questions or ideas or thoughts that you'd like to share with our Equip team, our Roundtable team, please go ahead and send us an email, equip@austinridge.org. And as always, kind of like I mentioned before, we hope you subscribe and share. People can find us on iTunes and Stitcher at Equip Austin Ridge. Thanks again for joining us today.